Hello everyone, I'm Greg Otto with FedScoop TV, and today we're at the MobileGov Summit. I'm talking with Mike Basore, the Director of Client Solutions for Dell. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much.
So talk to me about what innovations you're seeing in respect to mobility within federal agencies, and how is Dell helping to drive that innovation?
Well, here's kind of what we see, right? We know that the federal government's spending about $80 billion on IT.
Right.
I've also read stuff that says 75-ish% of that is being focused on legacy support.
Also right.
Right, so to me that seems like we need to go look at some things different. And to me, one of the things that I've seen out there, are really three things I can say that I've seen out there that appear to say, hey, we're going to do things differently.
Okay.
We look at things like FITARA that's come out.
Right.
Right. The big goal we see in FITARA is how do we make federal CIOs more like commercial CIOs, right? We all know that the federal CIOs are not going to be identical to what goes on in the commercial industry.
Right.
We need to go look for what's the right fit, the right solution for the federal government, but this empowers them to go look at the budget differently, to start thinking about how do we look for the right solution for what we're doing, and not just simply going after, hey, what is the lowest cost technically acceptable, right?
Right.
The next thing that I think out there that is a really big change in going on is we've seen the directive from the Department of Defense around Windows 10, right? This is kind of game changing. This is our warfighters going, look, we need to have the most modern, best secure technology. We think that that's really important because, let's face it, you need to be modernized to protect yourself. There's all kinds of malware, there's all kinds of bad guys out there trying to do all sorts of stuff.
Right.
By keeping that infrastructure modern, we're keeping it more secure. So again, that Windows 10 directive we think is really a great thing, and we know that some of the civilian agencies are also looking at and how can they adopt some, if not all of that. Then of course the last thing is, I'll call it the legacy letter out there.
Okay.
It came out from some of the members of Congress, right? So a few senators, a few representatives, and they asked about 7 questions there. And it was things like, identify the legacy systems in your environment, old operating systems, looking for things like old hardware that's there. What are your plans to upgrade certain things? When you roll all these things together, that says that the federal government is really interested and really excited and acknowledging that there's a way to move forward, to go look at how we can go do these things differently. So once you've done that, then you start to say, how do we get there? What are the innovative things that we can go do around mobility? Well, now this lets us say, let's go look at what the best value solution is. And what I mean by that is, that's, hey, people go, oh look, best value solution, that's marketing speak. Well, really what I'm trying to make a point of here is this. When you have the ability to go look at the breadth of solutions out there. Today the federal government might go and write an RFP and they say I need X and I need Y and I need Z. And all of those individual things are going to be really important. But what this will allow them to do, we believe, is to sort of allow companies to come in and say, here's how we can add more value to what your request is. So they're going to get the most substantial return on that investment. They're going to get the absolute best solution that's out there. Does it necessarily mean it's going to cost more? No. But what it means is they can look at input differently than they have in the past and make that smart choice on what we go and do. So this leads to great partnerships. And you look at companies like Dell that have been doing a lot of this stuff for a long time. This gives us the ability to really help and aid and get to those great solutions.
So you talked about smart choices. Speaking of smart choices, security. How do you see innovations around security helping drive the next workforce that is coming into federal agencies that are looking to be able to access their work anywhere, anytime, any place?
Yeah, I think there was a time where people said, I've got to have a desktop and I've got to have a wire to that desktop. And when we start to go look at the way people behave today, what do they want? Well, we know people want to be mobile. We look at the statistics out there and something like 75% of people say that technology really influences how they work. In the private industry, about half of companies say technology is something that allows them to retain and recruit the best employees. So when we look at mobility, we look at where this is going, what we see is how can the federal government be just as exciting to go work for as a startup in Silicon Valley or something like that? We want the federal government to be able to attract and retain outstanding talent. And we see that we're playing a role in there. So we start to go look at how do we do the security around that? Because if you're going to enable people to be mobile, then you're going to put them out there in the wild. And now you're going to have people working at coffee shops or cafes or bookstores or parks. And you need to make sure that they can access the information they need to access, but that you've got limits on what they can see based upon where they are. So you start to tie all these things together. It becomes about how do you access a system? What happens if something gets lost? How do you enable a bring your own device? Right? I look at myself personally, right? I have a phone, I have a tablet, I have a notebook, and I can access different pieces of information on this for work. We don't necessarily see that any different for someone in the federal government. That's how we go out there and say, let's make sure we can secure these things: access, encryption, anti-threat, right? Anti-malware, anti-spyware, so that the federal government can mimic, where it makes sense, the same things we see in commercial enterprise.
So moving forward, how do you see CIOs crafting a strategy for missions when, government agencies have such disparate missions? Think about, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Justice. These are huge agencies that have, touch a lot of different areas in our world. So how do you develop a strategy for the future of mobility?
Right, so one of the things that we really look at a lot are personas.
Okay.
Right? These personas we think are extremely important because they help us define how someone is going and working. Now, let's say that you've got someone that needs to go out into the field a lot. They're going to be talking to a number of people, maybe they're doing background checks or other things like that. So you see that sort of a person, you say, they're going to need something that's a thin and light device. A 2-in-1, a tablet, or some other type of things like that probably fits that persona very well.
Right.
Now we flip around and we start thinking about other products that are out there. We talk about things like rugged products. People will say, oh, rugged, that's police, that's firemen, that's the military. Who else needs those sorts of things? Well, let's think about something like the Department of Agriculture or Forestry Service.
U.S. Geological Service.
Yeah, Geological Service, right? You're talking about people that have to go out in the field. They're operating in harsh environments, cold, hot, wet, rainy, humid, all sorts of adverse conditions. So we need to focus on building the right devices for those environments, the right devices that fit those personas. Lots of different devices are going to help us go do that. So it's that diversity in what we look at that helps us bring the best purpose-built device for the job at the time that's going on.
Great. Very interesting conversation, Mike. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.